Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some late Monday night news for us Michigan fans until, quite frankly, some much needed good news for this Michigan program. Five-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalola making it official, committing to Michigan. Dill, we've talked a lot about this kid over the last couple of months. It always made so much sense for Andrew Babalola to wind up with Michigan. Sherrone Moore just never gave up on this one. And there was a lot of late pushes from a lot of other programs. Michigan they always seem like the program that checked the boxes Andrew Babalola was looking for. Now, I'll give my rundown on Andrew Babalola. A lot of Michigan fans have already heard my rundown on Andrew Babalola, but I want this conversation more to be catered towards, where Sherrone Moore is taking this Michigan program, where we're obviously, as Michigan fans, disappointed with what we're seeing on the football field in 2024. But you can tell that Sherrone Moore, he's handling business on the recruiting trail, and it looks and feels a little bit different from when Jim Harbaugh was the head coach at Michigan. Want to get into some of that conversation now. Before we do, and as always, to the Michigan fans, can't thank y'all enough. Y'all know the boys rock with Michigan, and the amount of support the Michigan fans have shown the fellas, it's been amazing. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, from what we're hearing from the beat writers, on the message boards, on Twitter, it sounds like it's going to be a fun next couple of weeks and months for this Michigan program, probably not only on the recruiting trail, but I would expect Sherrone Moore in Michigan to get awfully aggressive in the transfer portal over the next couple of months as well. So again, lock in. I think we're talking a lot of Michigan football over the next couple of weeks and months. I'm going to give I'm going to try to keep it under a minute because I've talked at length about Andrew Babalola over the last couple of weeks and months. Dill, 6'6", 280, carries the weight exceptionally well, 34-plus inch arms, former basketball player that displays just incredible athleticism for that size. Like, at the end of the day, when you're recruiting tackles, it's really hard to find guys that have the size that Andrew Babalola has, but also the athleticism that he has. I would argue that he has the highest upside of any offensive tackle in this 2025 cycle. Now, what I think is unique about Andrew Babalola is he's rather new to the sport. There needs to be some development that takes place. What I look at, this is by far the most talented offensive lineman that Sherrone Moore and this Michigan staff would have worked with over the last 10 years. This kid is truly special. So I can't wait to see what Sherrone Moore and this coaching staff can do with Andrew Babalola. But Dill, I think we all know Andrew Babalola is a stud. I think a lot of Michigan fans are certainly fired up for that. I want to kick it to you in terms of what this means for this Michigan program. Last time Michigan had 4 top 100 national kids committed in one class was 2022. Those kids included Will Johnson, Derek Moore, obviously Mason Graham and Colston Loveland were also in that class. A special class in 2022. Is Michigan putting that kind of class together in 2025 as well?
And that's why I think some people should back off a little bit with their criticism of Sherrone Moore and is he on the hot seat, all that talk. You look at the last couple cycles, it hasn't been good enough on the trail. I think Harbaugh's kind of will he, won't he with the NFL certainly hasn't been particularly helpful with that. And I think you look, Sherrone's at least putting them in positions. He's battling for top dogs very consistently. He's landing commitments. And that, to me, that hasn't been borne out more aggressively than what's happened on the quarterback trail. They haven't hit that guy. And again, that's coming home to roost. So I get people want to jump on Sherrone Moore for what's going on the field, but I think the direction had to change at some point. It wasn't totally sustainable. I think what Michigan was doing, where they were just hitting on a lot of kind of lower ranked guys. At the end of the day, recruiting has to matter. It needed to be a bigger focal point. If Michigan's going to build something a little more sustainable than maybe this last 3-year run kind of was.
Yes, sustainability is probably the word that I would use too. And again, I'm not going to question how Michigan was running that program leading up to 2023, but you look at the programs that are consistently national championship contending rosters, it starts at the high school ranks. I'm not saying Jim Harbaugh was a bad recruiter, but I don't think Jim Harbaugh cared about recruiting that much. It's not something that necessarily meant a ton to him. He was a very good football coach, and obviously we all saw that in 2023, but it was never like Michigan capitalized on all the success. You go back to the 2024 class, the class after we won a national championship, it came in 19th in the country. It never seemed like Michigan was maximizing what they can do on the recruiting trail. It's one of the bluest of blue bloods in college football. It offers off the field type stuff as well. It never really seemed to connect. And I think Sherrone Moore looks at this Michigan program and says, there's another level that Michigan can kind of get to on the recruiting trail. And you're seeing him put a lot of effort into those recruiting efforts. And I think one thing that's really important is I think he's hired a staff that can get it done on the recruiting trail as well. Every single guy that we talked about coming into this Michigan staff, like they have some sort of recruiting background. I want to specifically focus in on the offensive line, which has been a bigger problem than a lot of Michigan fans expected in the 2024 class. They'll take a look at the young nucleus that Michigan is building on the offensive line. And we all know this is a position that is awfully hard to address in the transfer portal, right? Every program wants to grab offensive linemen in the portal, and there just ain't that many good offensive linemen that are available in the portal. And so when you're trying to get the offensive line right, you got to make sure you're recruiting at the high school ranks. You go back to the 2024 class, Andrew Sprague, Blake Frazier, Jake Winera is a guy that it sounds like is going to be an absolute stud for Michigan. Then you take a look at the 2025 class, you add a guy like Andrew Babalola. You obviously have Avery, Caden Strayhorn from IMG, a guy that we both like a lot. Michigan wants to build this program through the trenches. That's how we won a national championship in 2023. It seems like we're getting back to that on the high school recruiting trail, the young talent that we're collecting on the offensive line. You feel pretty good that this offensive line is going to get a lot better over the next couple of years here.
And that really did need to be built back up to an extent. And I think the fact that guys like Zinner and Keegan were there for so long, I'm not saying like that's certainly not a bad thing, but it probably makes it a little harder to get new blood into it. And I think you're seeing that a little bit right now is, again, you had to really revamp it with 5 new starters. And it's just not playing the way I think you wanted it to play. And I think, again, you look at being able to win a couple of these more high-profile battles, the Babalolas, the Spragues, like those type of guys, they needed more of them. Because, again, you hit on some guys lower ranked perhaps on that offensive line, and you developed some good, really, really good players, obviously. But, again, it's more to me about sustainability in what's going to work in the long term. And I think, again, yeah, there's a reason Georgia's always a really, really good team. And Alabama under Nick Saban was a really, really good team. And Ohio State's a very good team. It's like you look at those recruiting ranks, they're always in that top 5. So, again, I look like this is the type of battle that needs to be won. I think you give Sherrone Moore a couple of years to really get this rolling. I don't see why Michigan shouldn't be in the top 10 really, really consistent.
And you go to, and I think to kind of highlight your point here, you go to some of these recruitment battles that we've seen Sherrone Moore and this staff win. It starts with Andrew Babalola, where you are battling the entire country for this kid. Everybody wants to add a guy like Andrew Babalola, but you look at Ivan Taylor from Florida. Bama's going after him hard. He obviously was formerly committed to Notre Dame. You look at Andrew Olish. You go head-to-head with Alabama. You go look at Andrew Marsh, 4-star wide receiver from the state of Texas, head-to-head with Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. You're starting to see Michigan kind of go nationally, which I think is we, as Michigan fans, you kind of want to see. Like, yeah, recruit your own backyard, recruit the Midwest, but there's so much talent in the state of Florida. There's so much talent in the state of Texas. You're seeing Michigan get that going on the recruiting trail as well. It seems like Michigan's operating at another level on the recruiting trail under Sherrone Moore. And I think what's most exciting for a lot of Michigan fans is when Michigan starts winning some football games, like I think this is kind of how we talked about with Miami. Like when Mario Cristobal took over Miami, they were recruiting well, but they weren't necessarily winning. And when they started to win some football games, you saw the recruiting kind of go in the right direction. I think for a lot of Michigan fans, this is the best Michigan has recruited in a very long time. What happens when Michigan kind of gets back? And I think we will get back under Sherrone Moore. I expect them to get aggressive in the transfer portal and be a much better team in 2025. I think the most exciting conversation is what happens when Michigan starts winning a lot of football games. You're continuing to put guys out into the NFL. I think with a coach that has a little bit more of a desire to hammer the recruiting trail, I think you're going to see this thing go in the right direction. And I think from what it sounds like, it's going to go in the right direction pretty damn quickly.
And that, to me, it always gets back to sustainability, because as much fun as I've had over the past 3 years, and all of us Michigan fans have had over the last 3 years, like, could you theoretically rely on hitting on Mike Sanders type players, Rod Moore type players, just at the clip Michigan was doing it again?
It's like, I would even interrupt you. I would even but like also like keeping those guys together for 3 straight years. Like in this era, like we kind of got lucky with guys like Blake Corum coming back. We obviously hit on JJ McCarthy, but guys like Zinter and Keegan, guys that could have gone to the NFL. Chris James, there's a laundry list of guys that could have gone to the NFL prior to that 2023 season, decided to come back. You love to see guys staying with the program. Those who stay will be champions. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to recognize that you need to recruit at the high school ranks well enough that you can replenish that talent. Michigan obviously struggled to do that.
And it needs to be every year. It's like Michigan would bring in a big class once, like every 2 or 3 years, it felt like with Harbaugh, but like there'd be those classes that rank into the 20s or like kind of down there. Like again, I think you want to see the top 10 pretty much every year. That should be the resting point. Again, I hope Sherrone Moore can kind of get it rolling in that way, because to me, it's just that feels like you can be good every year and you don't need to think about it. Like Michigan, obviously with Harbaugh, they'd have some really good years, they'd have some not good years, and then that was capped off by his tenure in that magical kind of 3-year run, let's say. But again, that's not like the recipe necessarily to do it and be a real monster that I think Michigan can be under Sherrone Moore, who again I think is embracing much more of the college mentality rather than Harbaugh, who was again really good developer of talent, really, really good culture builder for sure. But I think you'd like to see kind of all of that come together. Like Kirby Smart, I mean, he's a good culture builder, he's a good recruiter, he's a good developer, he has it all. I'd like to think Sherrone Moore maybe it can embrace kind of that holistic approach.
You have to, like you're seeing coaches refuse to adapt to the new landscape of college football, and you kind of see where those programs are headed. It's pretty clear Sherrone Moore knows how to operate in the new era of college football.
Well, and if it's not like, again, he's going to give us the chance to do it. At least that's the big thing to me, is he'll give you the chance to like kind of let Michigan be all it can be in a sense, like use every available resource and tool in the tool chest to go get the best players on campus and hopefully build a monster.
That's kind of the closing point. And obviously there's a lot of buzz around quarterback Bryce Underwood, but at the end of the day, I look at I think we both agree, and I think a lot of Michigan fans agree with this too. You look at this program and say it's one of the richest college football program traditions that you see in the country. Obviously, it offers a ton of opportunity off the football field as well. They're developing guys to go to the NFL. They're winning Big Ten and national titles. This program to me, and maybe I'm biased because I'm a Michigan fan, but this program to me checks so many boxes. This is a program that should be consistently recruiting. I'd even say top 8 and in some cases top 5. And we know Michigan likes to do it a certain way and grab their kind of guys that might not necessarily rank the highest according to these media sites. But at the end of the day, like this should be the expectation for Michigan. This is what this Michigan program can offer. And it looks like Sherrone Moore, although struggling in 2024, is kind of dedicated to maximizing this program and what it has to offer on the recruiting trail.
But again, I think like ignoring kind of some of the struggles on the recruiting trail over the past few years is like that's probably has a lot to do with what Michigan's struggles are. Again, they just didn't have the talent to backfill like you lose 17, 18 guys, whatever it was, to the league. It's tough when you haven't recruited at the highest of levels. And you didn't really have a chance to hit the portal in January because Michigan was playing for a national title. So all those things kind of come together where, yeah, you still have your horses. You have your Mason Grahams, Kenny Grants, like they're dominating, Colson Loveland's, but you have some very, very real deficiencies on this roster. I don't think that's arguable. And I think, again, like that has something to do, last couple of years of the Harbaugh tenure wasn't recruiting well, wasn't hitting the portal hard enough for like that, maybe building some young guys up to that. So again, it's to me, it all kind of came together. And again, like last season was magical, but it wasn't setting itself up to be particularly great in 2025. Now I'd take it 2024, I should say, and I'd take it any day, but I think it is what it is to an extent.
Yeah. And this is kind of how you avoid these kind of years. And I for one, am excited to see what Sherrone Moore and this Michigan staff can do over the next couple of weeks and months on the recruiting trail, kind of building back up this roster to Big Ten championship, national championship caliber. And again, I think this program has all the resources in place to do just that. We'll cut it out there. Again, late night deal, 10:30 Eastern time. The boys were low-key just kind of staying up for this commitment.
Well, yeah.
Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.